And now, please welcome our moderator, Elizabeth Jackson.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, hi, welcome. I would like to invite Kiara, do you want me to stay back here? I'm sorry. Kiara Alman from Georgetown University, Angela Rutner of Georgetown University, and Lauren Wilkins of Northeastern University. Congratulations, lady. I'm so excited. Let me read this. Okay. What the challenge is, in 2016, over 500,000 people experienced homelessness in the United States. Washington, D.C. accounted for over 8,000 of that population, ranking its fifth among major cities. While homelessness in the nation's major cities stayed relatively constantly between 2015 and 2016, homelessness in Washington, D.C. jumped 14%. Transitioning out of homelessness and into the workforce depends on many factors, including skills, placement services, confidence, clothing, and appearance. How they address this challenge. The Community Spa Network, love the name, is a new commitment designed to match DC homeless shelters with DC cosmetology schools that seek volunteers with whom their students can practice their skills, providing homeless people with a variety of free cosmetic services will help these volunteers gain confidence in their appearance when embarking on a job search. An online tool will be developed to build a directory of homeless shelters and cosmetology schools. Partnerships will also be established with nonprofits that provide professional clothing and job placement services. The network will seek to have the buses that pick up homeless people from the streets and bring them to shelters, also bring them from the shelters into the cosmetology school. It's awesome. The success of the Community Spa Network will be measured by exit surveys at the time cosmetic services are provided and through following up with volunteers to determine if the services contributed to job placement success. Oh, they have it. I want to give you another one. Oh my God. Thank you. No, thank you. That's awesome.
Can't wait to see that in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Please welcome Frank Smith of Arizona State University and Tyler Beals of Arizona State University. Oh, you have it?
Here we go.
Oh, here you go. What was the challenge? Children placed with foster families move on an average number of 3.5 times during their time in foster care. Those moves, regardless of their causes, mean new families, new schools, new communities, and often without warning. With every school move, children lose 4 to 6 months of academic progress, and their likelihood of ever graduating high school decreases. Permanence facilitates brain development and educational attainment, and decreases the likelihood of future homelessness and resilience on public assistance. And how are they addressing this? It's powerful. This foster match seeks to optimize the likelihood that a foster placement will be permanent using a matching algorithm. Foster match idea is to make the first placement the best and the last one. Foster match will engage with partners to build an algorithm and start a pilot placement program in Maricopa County, Arizona. Frank and Tyler hope to expand statewide and ideally to other states as well. The initial partners included the Annie Casey Foundation, Think of Us, the Children's Action Alliance, the Arizona Department of Child and Safety, the Center of Child Wellbeing, and the Arizona State University School of Social Work. The success of foster match will evaluate by the length of the of the foster child, foster family placement, and the correlation between individual parameters used for matching and the success of the matches. The algorithm can be changed to reflect the community it is serving most accurately. Foster match is designed by Foster Youth for foster youth. Congratulations. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, good. I would like to welcome our panelists. Please welcome up to stage Sixto Cancel, the CEO of Think of Us. Think of You, us. Think of Us. Please welcome to the stage, all the way from Tel Aviv, Mariama Ben Joseph, founder and CEO of Shanty House Association. And also joining us, Nan Roman, president from the National Alliance to End Youth Homelessness. Oh, and homelessness. Sorry, we're in the youth panel, and I added youth to that, so I apologize. It's to National Alliance to End Homelessness. Welcome. Okay. Do you guys want to introduce or talk a little bit about yourselves? Yeah? Okay, so then I'll start asking questions before the panelists, before everyone starts asking questions. Tell me a little bit about, do you guys hear me? Okay, I'm not good, so tell me if this is not in my mouth. Tell me a little bit about, since I introduced you, sister, let's start with Nan. Tell me a little bit about your organization and what brings you here.
Is it on?
Yes. Okay.
So the National Alliance to End Homelessness is an organization that's focused just on ending homelessness. That's our total mission. We're not a trade association. We're simply focused on finding solutions and getting them implemented. And we do that through three things. One is we use data and research to try to figure out what works better to end homelessness. Then we work with the federal government to implement those things. And finally, we work with communities to build their capacity to do them.
First of all, good afternoon. I think that I will start by the fact that I was one like any other homeless that was living in the streets of Israel. I didn't plan to open this organization. It's something that developed to be from the needs of the country. I was exactly like them. I lived in the streets. I went through neglection and abuse that made me understand that I didn't have a place like that to go to. It was 33 years ago, in '84 I started. I do it for 33 years. There's been more than 50,000 children that went over our organization. I have to say that there is no politics in it, and Jews, Christian, and Muslim can go in from the age 14 till 21. We are talking about sex abuse, violent abuse, children that got neglected from their parents, and they live, some of them in the streets. Some come from juvenile courts and social workers. Thank you.
So I'm excited that you're here because that means you weren't afraid of the rain and on the journey here. A little bit about Think of Us. Think of Us is really focused on how might we be able to use 21st century technology to be able to make sure that young people transition successfully from being in the system to being connected to education and or the workforce. Right now, 23,000 young people age out of foster care, and without the proper support, what we've seen is that about 20% will experience homelessness within the first 2 years of aging out.
So we're here talking about youth homelessness. So can any of you tell me what is the difference in the challenges of youth, specifically homelessness? What does it look like?
You look at me because I lived in
no,
the States,
I'm
no
not looking at
problem, I will tell you.
Whoever wants to answer any of you.
No, it's okay.
No.
It's very scary. But I have to say that sometimes I will talk about myself, I prefer to live in the streets and not to live with my mother. Because I had so much abuse, and sometimes people don't understand why children are running away. And sometimes you run away because you not exist in your home, or you have so much abuse that you prefer to have the surviving of the streets. And in the streets, for a girl, it's much, even the boys also have it, but it's much more dangerous of the rapes and from drugs and from the fact that you have to eat from garbage to survive and not to sell your body. So I think the whole process of a child or teenager to live in the streets and not to be a hooker or not to be a druggist in the end of the road of it, it's a very long road, and you have to be very strong warrior to live and be choosing life, because sometimes the only fact that you understand is not knowing what's life and what's death.
Yeah. So when I think about youth homelessness versus adult homelessness, I actually don't like to go into that arena because we've risked playing the oppression Olympics, right? So when I think about our work, I think to myself, why is it that we focus on 14 to 26-year-olds? One, because we're using results-based accountability, which is this TDS framework that says define your program population. But the reason why we are focused on this specific age group is because the neuroplasticity of the brain. So before, we used to believe that 0 to 6 is when your brain had its most plasticity, the flexibility to learn, to wire itself, right? And our experiences literally wire the neurons in our brain. It physically creates pathways, and the things that we practice get stronger, as we know, and the things we don't practice don't get so fully wired. And so for our work, what we believe and why we're intensely focused on this program population is because we see, well, let me back up. So in 2011, Jim Case Youth Opportunity Initiative released a report around the neuroscience around the adolescent brain. And what it stated is that there's a similar plasticity in the brain of that from 0 to 6, and this ability to rewire and to wire new pathways in the brain. So this gives you the second chance to say how might we really take advantage of providing the opportunities that young people would then be able to build those skills that they need to build in order to enter adulthood. So for me, I think for us, we think through what are the experiences that young people are having during that adolescence, what is that actually wiring in their brains, and that's why it's so critical for us to be thinking through, how they stably house so that we are providing the right developmental opportunities for them.
So maybe I don't understand because of my English, but if somebody comes to rape you, or your mother or your father give you scars and you run away, you think about the brain in that moment, or you think about surviving? No, I really don't understand what you meant. I really wanted to understand.
Yeah, no, I appreciate a really good conversation. Let's keep it 100% real. So, let's get there, right? So, just like you, when I was 13, I was adopted by a very abusive, racist woman. And when she couldn't beat the resistance out of me, she put me to the streets, right? And you are right. When I was in those streets, I was not thinking about a brain at all. I was thinking about survival. But the reality is that as I came back into foster care at 15, there was some healing that needed to happen. And so for me, when I think about how are we designing our interventions, I do think to myself, how do you start to provide an environment and an intervention that helps you heal, develop, and then be conscious of the actual neuroscience in it. So it's not that it's a pushback or anything like that. It's more of how is it that we're being intentional about creating opportunities, for example, that allow me to trust an adult now. Because all I learned while I was in that adoption...
You talk about solution. That's
yeah,
amazing. This is a part of a solution. Now I understand, because I really didn't understand.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Nan, would you like to add any
I think just reflect, kind of looking at it from the national perspective. One thing that is different is that youth homelessness tends to be much more related to family conflict. It's not that you don't see that in the adult population, but that's a lot more causal in the youth population. And the interventions, service needs are somewhat different. But on the other side, I think so much of what goes on really is the same. The risk points where people are exiting systems, for example, that might be foster care or juvenile justice for youth, but that's also corrections and hospitals, mental health facilities, and so forth for adults. The support network thing, which is the fundamental part of the family conflict. That's often the absence of a support network is often the cause of adult homelessness. And then the other thing I just want to mention as we're looking at kind of the bigger demographic shifts are that, you know, in the 70s, we really did not have widespread homelessness in the country at all. This was something that emerged in the 80s. And one of the things that happened was that in the 80s, when it emerged here, a lot of the young people did not get attached to the labor market because there was a recession at the time. And now we have this thing called chronic homelessness, which is people who are disabled and homeless for long periods of time. That started with young people who didn't get attached to the labor market. And not just chronic homelessness, but all of the homeless demographics, or just that movement of that young population through the age groups. So homeless people have been aging. Just to say that we have another group of young people today that are having trouble attaching to the job market, the labor market, for a variety of reasons. And if they don't, we're going to see another big increase. Homeless has been going down, it's going to go up again, and we're going to see chronically homeless people in the future. I think that's something we want to avoid.
Can you guys talk to me a little bit about, is it just one race? Is it one population? Is it one age? What is it, your demographics that you're seeing, that your agencies see, that where are the policies? Is it urban areas? Is it the suburbs? Where are these young people coming from in the national perspective, or in Israel, or in the programs that you guys are serving?
So I was going to kick it over to you because you really are the expert at data when it comes down to the United States. But I can tell you from my very, very limited kind of dealing with in foster youth who age out, the young people who age out of foster care tend to be mostly minority, even though there are more white children in foster care than one specific group of minorities. And we can break that down in so many different ways that we don't need to do now. So I
If I could just interrupt on that, there was just a study, the family options study, also a side study of that showed that there tend to be significant racial disparity in intervention in foster care. In other words, African American families are much more likely than white families to have their children taken away and placed in foster care. So it's not a surprise what you're saying.
I have to say that for me it doesn't concern which level of society you are. They are coming from very rich families to very poor. It doesn't matter what you have in the bank account. It doesn't matter if you are white, black, Muslim, or Jew. I can tell you something that it's very interesting. Many come from religious families, you know, very religious families, that you see lots of sex abuse in the religious families. But if I want to say something that points, I think it's not only the kinds of sectors. Some of the sectors, their mentality is very different than white and blacks, okay? They are even more mature than we think. Because if I work with Ethiopians that just came from Africa, or from Bedouins, okay, that have a very different mentality than the New Age, it's much harder to give them help. You know, they are much more close in their tribes, and you have to teach them very slowly how to give them help, you know, because their parents and their parents and all the chain of family, it's like very, very not wanting anybody to know what's really going on in the families. So your question it's like a rainbow of answer for me, okay, because it's not only blacks, whites, or yellow. It's everything.
Yeah.
I think here it's a little bit different than that, and African Americans are overrepresented in the youth population. It looks like American Indians, there's some, Native Americans, there's some indication that they're overrepresented. Recently, it was starting to look like Hispanics, which had been underrepresented, are now also overrepresented. LGBTQ people, very overrepresented in the homeless youth population. And it looks like rural and urban, there's some new data about that, actually looking fairly similar, which is a bit of a surprise. And people coming from poor families, definitely overrepresented. It is not an equal opportunity experience. Not that there aren't people from middle class and wealthy families.
Yeah. Is this a housing problem? Should we just get housing for everybody?
You know, I think you hit it on the point when you said it's about support. I mean, part of what we're doing at Think of Us is figuring out how might we leverage technology to specifically a platform where young people build their own type of personal advisory board. And they do things such as work with that personal advisory board to tour the right apartment, to make sure that they are ready for that job interview, because without family support, that family-like support, you really are at risk. What happens when you make that one small decision, that wrong decision in your budget that month? You don't have mom or dad to call and say, hey, can you help me cover the rent this month? No, like, you're screwed. And so for me, I feel like, and for many of my peers, you know, aging out of the system, it's like every single month you have to be on your game. There is no such thing as let me screw up this month and then I'm going to be okay. You risk losing quite a bit. You're one paycheck a lot of times from being homeless.
Any of you agree? Do you think it's a?
I didn't understand the question.
Do you think is it a housing problem? Do you think we should build more houses, and that's why youth are homeless, or is it different for youth homelessness that even if we had a lot of housing, that
Even if we have a lot of housing, and I think we should have, there will always be homeless and runaways.
Yeah.
Because it's not only depends on the kid, it depends on the roots that you came from.
Right.
It depends if your parents neglect you and don't know how to be parents. It's not your fault. Or somebody sex abused you in the family and you have to run away. So it's not only that you build homes. It's for sure there is a problem that will always be. You know, it's like, it's something of our personal DNA from the good and the bad in life that we have to cope with. I think that the more institutions and places that we support can give more solutions. But there's always going to be a problem from my point of view.
So I have a little bit different perspective, although I agree that we're not going to solve these crises and we're not going to eliminate these crises. And also, I agree that having caring adults in your life is essential. But I also think that if people have a place to live, they're not homeless. So they may have all these other problems, but they're not homeless. And that at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, that's our job, is to make sure they're not homeless. We're not trying to solve every problem that they have. So just, Sixto, you mentioned the high percentage of young people exiting foster care who become homeless, and it is a really high percentage, but if you look at the numbers, you said 23,000 young people become homeless every year, somewhere between 25 and 30%, in there somewhere. I mean, leave foster care, I'm sorry, 23,000 leave foster care, somewhere between 25 and 30%, 20 and 30% become homeless, and that's only 6,000 people every year. That's not very many people. And if we gave everybody who left foster care, for example, a housing voucher, they wouldn't at least be homeless. They might have all kinds of other problems, but they wouldn't have to worry about the rent every month that they were going to be on the street. Or if we gave them a family unification program voucher, which is a shorter term voucher, that would at least solve that problem. And then they would have the stability of a home on which to build everything else and have a stable place and not be moving around to develop those support networks. So it's not everything, but it's really hard to think about people solving all these other really difficult problems that you both talked about when they don't have any place to live.
You know, and this might be a little controversial, but for me, you know, in the work that we have started we have done, and granted we've only been doing this for 2 years with transition age foster youth, but what we've seen is a difference between our young people who have more of the family supports and then young people who have had a stable housing voucher and been in that housing, but yet sometimes having that stable network, even when they're unstably housed or they're going from couch to couch, they're getting to a place to be able to be self-sufficient faster than some of the young people who just have housing without those same social supports. And so I think it's not like one or the other. I think we have to really figure out the dosage of a yes and situation, because I've literally, had young people stay with me who were unstably housed, and I made that mistake of thinking, oh, I travel a lot, you have an apartment, I did some groceries, and 3-4 weeks from now you have a couple of paychecks, you should be able to, you should be good to move into your own apartment. Boy, did I learn that was the wrong way of doing it,
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think we need it more as an option. And also, actually, I don't think it's a good idea to just give everybody a voucher, by the way, when they emancipate. But I think you could look at risk factors and you could figure out who needed it. I'm just saying it wouldn't be that expensive. You're talking in the tens of millions of dollars a year, which in the U.S. budget, federal budget, is nothing. To just say we're going to eliminate this particular problem of people who can't afford, who are emancipating, who can't afford a place to live.
I have to say something. I'm working very different in my organization, because maybe it's because I lived in the streets, I don't know, but the method that I developed, it's all about choosing. If you don't choose, it doesn't matter that your social worker will run after you and the judge will tell you, you go and have a new life now, if not you will be in a closed institution. Sometimes it's not only the walls. You can have an amazing walls and in amazing hostel or boarding school or a housing, but inside you feel so a black hole that you have to work with the black hole and to make the soul wants to make a change. So when they come to the home, that's why I choose to work with the ages 14 till 21. When you choose, you start a new step. So whatever wall you have, a tent or a wall or whatever, will always you embrace it as something that will save your life and you can move on. Sometimes we want to give the milk to the ones that sometimes prefer not to take it, and we have to give them the chance to choose so we can do the right work with them. That's how I believe. Because there are many cars that said, oh, would you like some cake, some food? And I said, oh, yes. And I took the joint, smoked the joint, went to eat because I wanted some sweets. And then I went back and said, oh, thank you so much. And it's good for them to feel good. But it doesn't mean that I chose to go out of the streets. So when you choose to go, you're making the change. You have to have the facilities, but the part that you give the facilities is the one that want, not the ones that you want them to want. It's a very different approach.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add to that, sister?
No. Well, it's just a little geeking out. If you want, look up Anthony Grant, Go Focus Coaching, talks about the importance of, it's an evidence-based framework around people selecting their own goals. And as we think about our work in serving those, it's important to make sure that whoever we're serving is at the center of their case planning and at the center of choosing that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting hearing you speak, because I hear the heart, I hear the policy, and I hear how to make it work between the three panelists. So I don't know if you guys are getting that too, where it's like, how do we get to a young person? How do we make sure we provide the services they need? And then policy-wise, can you guys talk to me a little bit about this for lack of other terms, a system that will work with young people? I heard you, Sexter, say that it has to be a little bit of everything. I heard you, Mara, say that it's love. And can you guys talk a little bit about what does that look like? If we want to end, in the United States, we have end homeless youth by 2017?
2020.
2020. We're going to end homelessness by 2020.
That was the last administration.
Yeah, so...
The one that cared?
So but let's
get in trouble again.
Yeah, no. So we're gonna end it by 2020. So what does that look like?
When I think about like a realistically where we're at, we are in an interesting political climate, right? And in the past, we've seen a lot of federal supports. And the important work of data and understanding what's actually going on is critical to actually solving these issues. And as we see things start to shift and potential cuts, I think to myself, as an organization, how are we preparing to support people to navigate to the next level? Because we do know that the traditional way of doing it before is not going to be the way that it's going to happen in 2-3 years from now. We got some different challenges. So for me, I think to myself about how do we tap into the power of human connection? One of the things that we've done in our coaching platform is when a young person, there was a young man, he was like, I'm getting kicked out of my independent living program, which is a program that where you get to live in a specific place, your own apartment, it's subsidized, etc. And immediately he's like telling this sad story to me, and I'm like, stop, I need to know what it's going to take for you within 8 weeks to get into your own apartment. And he was like, I just need a deposit and I need a couple checks to save from job, And then I was like, okay, great. Now, which one of your supportive adults can you actually have the conversation with? Not from the perspective of poor, this is what's happening and it's unfair, but here's what I really need, and I'm not going to be perfect in those 8 weeks, but can I get supported? Can I receive some support, stay with you for 8 weeks to, move somewhere. And it's a different way of looking at the work, because usually we would use technology and think about it as in which homeless shelter should we be going to? Where is there an open bed? And there's a place for that, and we need that. And then sometimes there is a place to tap into human connection, people who are willing to be there for you and say, hey, listen, this is very clearly what I need. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. If anybody's staying with you for 8 weeks, it's gonna be difficult. It's not an easy thing, especially when you've experienced certain trauma. And so I think for myself, when I think about the folks in the room, I would think about how do we start to think about solutions that are a little bit non-traditional than what we have seen, because I don't know how much we can rely on some of the solutions we have had, not to discount them, because some of them really do work. But as we move forward, we're gonna have to figure out a different way to do that. And different ideas have always come from the younger crew, but at the same time, those who are seasoned, I am hiring all types of seasoned folks right now, because they have the experience and the knowledge and the execution that sometimes, because we are newer professionals, young professionals, we have not had enough practice to start implementing those. So as you think about your commitments of action and you think about what you can do, it is a youth and adult partnership, young professional, seasoned professional, a partnership. It is putting the person whoever you're serving at the center of the design, at the center of the implementation, at the center of everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're going to move into, unless anyone wants to add to that, but I think we're moving into the informal student groups.
Yes, thank you very much for the panel. They're not done yet. They're going to come back. They're actually not going anywhere. But one of the things that we do at CGI U, because one of the biggest assets that exists here is actually you guys, the students and your peers next to you. We're going to spend the next 10 minutes allowing you to be able to talk to the people next to you. Please take that time, share not only with somebody you know, but with somebody you don't know. Introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your commitment, talk a little bit about something you heard here on the panel that you want to discuss. And within 10 minutes, we're going to reconvene again and open it up to questions from you to the panelists. In that time, by the way, the panelists will be kind of lurking around here. If you have specific questions, you can also tag them and do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks. It's not on? Oh, hi. I don't want to even interrupt all the education and all the speaking that's happening right now, but I can't wait to hear your thoughts. So thank you for coming back to us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. We're at the question and for our panel part, but we wanted to really give you an opportunity to talk, and I can't wait to hear what kind of questions you would like to ask our panel. So raise your hand, and oh, well, there's one already here. I love it. There you go.
Hello, my name is Melissa from the University of Central Florida. My commitment has to do with empowering leadership within elementary school students. So really, as an educator, I work a lot with youth and homelessness, and it's very real in the education system. So from your perspective, I'd like to know what you all believe just the school system can contribute to the solution of youth homelessness.
Yeah, so one of the powerful things that the former commissioner of New York City did, well, let me back up. In New York City, there are literally hundreds of thousands of child abuse reports coming in, right? And there was specifically a one school that kept bringing different referrals to the system. And that causes child welfare to get involved and so forth. But one of the things that that commissioner did was she actually went visit the school and said, here are all the different ways that you can respond besides reporting someone for neglect and abuse. And that school system dropped 60% their reports to the child abuse hotline, because now that school had different ways to respond and support those families that they were concerned about. So when I think, immediately when you ask that question, I think to myself, if schools are equipped with, we heard NAM, is it? NAM. We heard NAM talk about that family conflict is, such a huge core part of why young people are running away and so forth. Then how are schools going to be equipped to understand, hey, this young person in this family might benefit from program A because it specializes in this type of family conflict, which can be culturally appropriate, XYZ, to be preventative, right? And I think that is something that each and every single one of you in the audience can do without having to say, I need X amount of dollars, and still have impact.
Okay. I just want to know that I understood the question. You asked, what do I suggest for schools, for leadership to make it better? Yes. Okay. So I understood the question. I'm coming from a different approach, again. I think in many schools around the world, teachers forgot that they are teachers. I think that teachers are very important role in the life of a child, because they teach them life. Except home, they have the teachers in school. And it became to be something that you do it mechanically. There are different. I think if I would have put my, if I would put my energy in, I will put it in developing teachers that from their soul see it as their mission, like even it's a religious of love mission, to change the way of things. So there will be passion for children to go to school, not because only of the children, also because of the teachers, because today teachers don't have patience and they are not motherhood like they used to be. It's all changed, it's very technical, and that's what a child needs, warmth. So if you combine it together, that's a good success for children to be much more better human beings in their life, because this role is one of the most important ones in their life, school time.
Nan, do you want to add to that or no? There was another question here. Yeah. And then over here. Okay. Then you have one, and then you have one. Okay.
Hi. Thank you so much for everyone on the panel for joining us and sharing your wisdom. My name is Marika Klein, and I'm here representing George Washington University School of Public Health, where I recently received my master's in public health. Nan, you had mentioned while you were speaking exit points for youth from the social services system, and my program is with Greater DC Diaper Bank.
Is what?
Greater DC Diaper Bank, and we have seen that things like diapers and family supplies serve as incentives and an entry point to people who are flying under the radar to get back into the social services network. And I'm wondering if anybody on the panel has any thoughts about my particular project has to do with using period products for people who experience menstruation while homeless, and trying to see if that will also serve as an incentivizing entry point into the social services network. And I was wondering if you'd ever had any experience with anything like that, or if you have any thoughts on any other incentivizing programs, or how we get people to those entry points again.
Well, I'll just say two quick things. One is, one thing we haven't actually really talked about is young parents. And there, I think about, I can't remember exactly, but I think 60,000 homeless families where the adult is under 24, or the parent is under 24. It's mostly single parent families and mostly the mom. And that's a different, just remind me when you said that that's a population that has a different set of needs, and they often go into the family homeless system in the U.S., but they're really, to go back to Sixto's earliest point, they really do not take into account their developmental needs at all. There's nothing different that's done for young parents that isn't done for older parents, which is lost opportunity. But definitely healthcare is a draw. The availability of healthcare is a draw all across the homeless population that gets people involved in the system. The availability of healthcare. Here in Boston, you have the Jim O'Connell, who was the
Healthcare for the
founder
homeless.
of Healthcare for the Homeless, one of the first doctors to really, he was providing emergency assistance, but later started using that to help people move into housing and so forth. So that's definitely true. And it also brings up the point that I think several people all of us have made here today, is that you can, from a policy perspective, you can think about everybody needs this and everybody needs that, but really everything has to be tailored to what it is that people want. If you try to give people things that they don't want because you think they're good for them, it will not work. And so you do have to, I mean, it's not that you have to just give everybody everything they want. None of us, that's not good for any of us either, but you have to tailor it to their needs. You have to involve young people in the process of, you have to have choice, as you said. And I think healthcare, the reason that people are attracted into the system because of these things that you're talking about, things that they need, is because they want them. And when they want them, that if the services are good and they meet the needs that people have, they will use them.
Yeah. I would add a little bit to that. I agree, because Bridge started in 1970, and we started with street outreach. And we started giving kids what they needed and what they wanted. And we heard a lot back in the 70s that they couldn't go to the doctors because they didn't have health insurance, and they couldn't call their moms because they weren't attached to mom. So we created the first in the nation medical van and partnered with Mass General, and we provided, it was street outreach and medical van. Some young people came and we have volunteer doctors. They came to the van and got services, and if they needed floss, and what we saw, the dentist, the doctor saw the young people on the van and saw their teeth was really bad. So they talked to their dentist doctor friends, and we started our dental clinic. So by 1973, our program was started, street outreach, medical, and dental, because that's what the young people wanted then. And I agree that choice is very important for young people to feel, especially if they've been violated in any way, their parents are not there, or a system has failed them. What makes you the person that's going to save them? So they need to feel like this is their choice to have. But there was a question over here.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Emily. I'm from UC San Diego. I'm here representing a group called Movement Exchange. We are a group of dance diplomats trying to teach culture through dance. And the community we're focusing on is foster children and children from underserved communities in San Diego, because our school is based in San Diego. So at the same time, we also have international dance exchange to Panama. So that's a little bit background about what we do. And my question is, so we've noticed through our outreach to San Diego Center for Children, which is a 24/7 rehab for children who have experienced trauma, who has anger issue or behavioral issues. We go there to teach dance to them, but we are university students. We are not trauma informed. And a very simple example is we were trying to teach popping to them. It's a very simple way, just like control your muscle, like tense and you lose. Some kids don't get it, and they get so frustrated and angry at themselves, and they will just storm out of the room and never come back. So for us, we were like, when the first time I experienced that, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, what should my response be? Because no one has trained us, even though we are like dancers, but no one has trained us to how to deal with children who has been traumatized, and what are their, like, like we're trying to avoid trigger, right? So like it's very hard, at least in our own community, to find a mentorship who can train us on how to teach dance and how to teach culture. Because we already have a hard time to push dance through our curriculum. And how can we implement culture in a way that the kids can accept? That's my question. So maybe I'm more looking for advice and mentorship, maybe possible connection. Thank you.
So, yeah. The first thing I would say is really take the responsibility of becoming trauma-informed. And that's on us. If I was a carpenter, guess what I would do? Go get my carpenter license, right? But that's not what everybody's going to do. So there's a way to engage. I think there's several options. There's like, who can you partner with in the community to get that training, but to also just have someone present there. I think we talk a lot about avoiding triggers, but we need the space to actually go through it, and provide the space and know that we're love whole and we're going to be welcome back after that. And then I would start to think about where is the dance program, like what's the cohort of people you're serving, where are they developmentally, and how are you making sure that the dance lessons are appropriate to it? Because for me, when I was 13, the reason I couch surfed for 2 years and I was very blessed to never have spent a day on the street homeless because, or not say homeless, but spending a night on the street, because I was part of a musical theater group that I just kept going to all 14 people's houses. They had their rotations. They knew I was coming. It was my week. But in all seriousness, I think that the power of dance is sometimes we get so caught up in what the dance looks like. We get so caught up in making sure that it's rigorous, that you have the right form. When a dance program like that, for me, that pressure was not what I needed, because I was like practicing extra hard and it was still not good enough. But it's about the human connection that happens in that group, so that some healing happens, but also that network of people can save your life.
I just want to add to what he said. First of all, I salute you, because you have to understand that arts in any form, theater, dancing, painting, it's one of the most amazing medicine for teenagers at risk, for me. It's much more even, you peel the onion of pain. But if I add something to what he said, because he said almost everything, is usually in groups like this, what we do, we take dancers that already went through the trauma and they succeeded through the dancing, and they are example for the ones that are there. So if you are like 5 dancers, the 6th one should be one that already went forward, succeeded, and is example for the ones, and knows the knowledge and the language that you don't know how to respond to them. So then you have somebody that see the language and understand how to work with them.
Nan, do you want to add to that?
Can I just add to, I think this is such an important point, and it's something I went through myself also. I worked at an organization and with people who were very vulnerable, and I got my training is in anthropology, cultural anthropology. Totally irrelevant to, I obviously didn't learn anything about helping people. And I really realized, I talked to some people about this earlier today, that I didn't know how to help people, and that it's, having a big heart is not always enough. And you can hurt people. And if you don't know what you're doing. And so I'm just to reinforce, I think this is really important. Just because we are volunteering doesn't mean that we're doing good. It's, it's not about us, it's about really, so sometimes you do just need to step back and get the skills about how to really help people, because
There's an answer for that here, so maybe I can get you guys to speak on it, because we have 5 minutes. So, you had a question too, so you have a question and then we'll move over to
I'll try to go quickly.
Yeah.
My name's Daniela Brissett, and I'm in my last year of medical school at UCSF. I practice in San Francisco, where there are a lot of safety nets and a lot of resources. However, the accessibility is very limited. My question for all of you is, what innovative ways for which we have, or which innovative ways do we have to address accessibility to this very marginalized community?
Any one of you?
You were stumped.
Yeah.
That's a really hard question. I mean, and I don't think I have a particularly good answer to it. I will say this. I think that people, there are a lot of different reasons why people want to do something about homelessness or people who have less. And sometimes, maybe this goes back to Aristotle, who said, whose methods of persuasion, that, some of it is the heart and some people are attracted through making a case about pulling their heartstrings. Some people are attracted by a logical argument and workability. I think there's no real single answer for that. But most people in America, I think, do not like homelessness. They think they may not like it because they just are offended by it, or they think people are reprehensible or whatever, but they don't really like to see it and they don't think we ought to have it. And so I think there's always a way to motivate people. And I will say also that homelessness in this hyper, whatever it is, political environment we have now, has always been bipartisan in my experience. And often, I will say as a Democrat, we do better with Republicans and more conservative people, although not always, as you brought up before. Foster care too. Yeah. And so there's always a way, but I don't think there's a single way.
Does anyone want to add to that? No? Okay. There's a question here.
Hi, my name is Ruchi. I will be really quick. I'm very excited that you asked the question about dance, because that gives me an opportunity to tell you what I do. So I'm a dance movement therapist. So dance movement therapy is a form of psychotherapy that uses movement in the body to heal any mental health issue. So for you, my answer is find a dance movement therapist around your area, and I can help you connect to someone and collaborate with them. Because what I did was working at psych hospitals in Chicago with kids exactly like that. My question for you guys is, my commitment to change is to set up dance movement therapy and counseling programs in the slums back in Mumbai for kids who've experienced complex trauma. So while they're not necessarily homeless in the definition of the word, there's a lot of other things, neglect, abuse, the whole gamut of trauma. And the challenge that I'm facing while I think about setting something up is reaching out to people and having people believe in what I'm doing without having tangible or measurable outcomes. So how, in a space like therapy, or when you're dealing with something like trauma, and when you're dealing with something like resilience, how do you create objective, measurable, tangible goals and outcomes so people will fund your project, will support your project, provide you with the space, with money, with anything? Because the language that we use is so gray sometimes.
Yeah, so I'll leave you kind of with a story real quick. There was a young man that was adopted from India. And 4 years ago, there was no formal foster care system in India. And this man was like, I'm going to go to India and I'm going to start the foster care system. And we were like, you barely speak the language. And that's exactly what he's doing today. And so I would continue to push forward and start to get to the common beliefs, because they even had to figure out what is the word for foster care in India, and start to train a group of early adopters of foster families who would decide to go on that journey. So it is possible. He's now working with one of the state governments, and it's moving. So it's persistent and it's hard work, but it's really, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we all understand pain, and we all understand the need to heal from that pain. And so whether you're talking about, maybe it's not always selling so much on the dance aspect or the part where you're getting resistance, but getting that commonality about what is really the two things that we truly believe.
That's great. I want to keep talking, and I want to stay here. I know this is what we want to be at, but they have me on a time. You don't understand. It's coming all over. So everywhere I look, I'm being told to wrap up. So I don't want to take. I want to take this opportunity for you guys to really talk to us a little bit of how our audience can support homeless youth? How can we either through policy, either through education, either through dance, how do we leave this room and keep working and not give up on our mission that you just said, not give up on our passion? If you guys can talk for a couple of minutes of what can we do, because we're all doers. So at the end, we heard a lot of great information. We have a lot of great ideas, but what can each one of us leave with? I didn't mean to. I shouldn't look at nobody. It could be anyone.
Well, I'll just be very brief. I think we have these wonderful examples of people who are doing things that work, and if we're going to solve problems, which is what we're certainly about at the Alliance, we have to scale them up. And basically how we scale up on solutions to problems is through public resources and other resources too. But if you're going to really scale up, you've got to get money from the government, basically, state, local, and federal. And that takes advocacy. And so what we really need your help on is not to be passive in the face of the difficulties of the moment. We need people who are going to be more active in the face of the difficulties of the moment. And we may not win every substantive battle, but the main battle we need to win at the moment nationally is for money. It's really a resources issue. I think we'll succeed on the substantive matters, but if these huge budget cuts come to health care, to foster care, to all of the things, to housing, all this good work is going to go away when we're going to be struggling. So, get involved locally. You can go to our website, endhomelessness.org. We have this very expensive congressional quarterly deal, which allows you to basically just press a button and communicate with your entire congressional delegation. But whatever the way you want to do it, with whatever organizations, or just on your own, know your members of Congress and get involved as advocates.
Thank you.
If I want to send you with something, first of all, I want to say that it's an honor for me to see so many souls that care and want to care about others. There's such a self-centered world today. So first of all, I think that you are amazing that you sit here. The second thing is that don't forget to be a student all your life, because when you think you know everything, the ego starts and you don't really know what's going on because you don't see, you don't feel, you just... I think one of the things that made me success on doing what I do for 33 years is getting up in the morning and doing. I'm a doer. And it means that I get up in the morning and with my passion, I make others feel the same dream and passions for you. Because if you have people with you, that you make them passionate to your same dreams as you are stronger as a group and not as a... I couldn't have done many things that I did if I did it all by myself. You could have, you'll be a victim of your giving. You have to know how to make the passion. And if you don't have a passion for this, and to help, and to change, and to make the change, there will not be, because I don't look big to change the world. I want to change my small world and the world around me. And the minute you do it, it's like a circle that will keep on moving. That's what I give to you. Don't be afraid to make the change. That's all.
Thank you.
When I think about this last question, I first have to preface it by saying, the country is hurting right now. I personally feel hurting. I thought we were entering an age where, leaving President Obama, we were about to have this second golden age for people's development, people being able to position to thrive, and I don't know the certainty of that, right? So still was processing so much of the loss. But then I started to think back to kind of the civil rights movement and what that march really consisted of, right? And when we think about the march, we get the visual of people marching down Selma. But, in order for that to happen, there had to be people who wrote the checks to get gas into the buses, to get buses, right? There had to be the logistical people who it was not their calling to be in the front line to get bitten by the dogs and be hosed down, right? But it was their calling to organize the heck out of it. There were people who had the calling and bravery to be at the front line and know things are going to get real, and still not respond violently, right? So everyone had their piece in this, in the movement. And when I think about who's in the room, one of the things that I think we overlook all the time is that in order for this march to happen, in order for the civil rights to happen, is that you needed your white counterparts to actually be part of the conversation and be the champions and be the ambassadors to their other people who may have had a different opinion. And so when I'm thinking about right now, what the divide that we have is that we actually need to be sitting more than ever closest to the people who we believe are the other. You know, so if you believe that your other is conservative, if you believe your other is Republican, if you believe your other is Democratic, if you believe your other is liberal, then that is more of a reason to be sitting down with them and actually talking about what is the shared humanity and the shared outcome that you want. I have a board of directors who are both on both political spectrums, right? And the beauty of it is that we sit around with one mission. Now, we believe in different ways to get there, but the beauty is that we always end up moving forward with the next step in favor of what we're trying to do, which is to improve the lives of young people in foster care. So as you think about what you can do, as you move forward, I encourage you to say, have the tough conversations, and they're painful, and they're crazy, they're like out of this world sometimes, but having those tough conversations and then truly get to a place of partnership with the other that doesn't look like you, that doesn't, you sometimes you perceive that we can all perceive to believe that they may not believe the same things, so that we get to a place of common interest so that we can and be in service to the people that we serve.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, each one of you. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you for each one of you as well in the audience. When you leave here, you can start by joining the local board, your local school board, or the local volunteer at your local organization. Volunteer in something you haven't done ever before, and just try it and just go and see it. Open your heart, open your eyes. Don't forget, there's a lot of young people, some might sitting next to you or behind you, that were homeless as well. So when you do talk, when you have the conversations, is that it's all around us. And the thing about homeless youth is that it's hitting very well. And our young people don't talk about it. And so we need to keep talking about it, and we need to keep helping. So thank you so much for being here. Get involved. Call your representatives. Just be in your local school boards at school. Just really get involved. And thank you so much for being here.